Well, Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath, good evening, and welcome to this Friday evening Sabbathy Bible study for the 17th day of the 8th month on God's holy sacred calendar. And we're in and we're out. Well, that's kind of telling me that I need to switch back over to the Facebook page and finish pasting the create post to tell those who get notice from the weekly bulletin that we are live. And here's the link to where we're live on the Sabbath service page on Facebook Live. Okay, we made it. I see 4 of you are up on Facebook right at the beginning of the program. We're also streaming live tonight on YouTube and our own homepage at cogtv.org, just like you see in the lower third down here at the bottom of your screen. In the window just below the banner, we have a window that shows the live stream. And if you ever don't find us on Facebook or YouTube at our broadcast time, take a flip over to cogtv.org and see if you see a live stream signal there, and that'll tell you, oh, we must have got cut off on one of the social media services, but we are streaming on our own homepage. Well, good evening. I hope you had a good week. I know God allows us to have trials, and it's like going to a gymnasium to work out. They have barbells and weights and weight machines in those gymnasiums, and those things are like trials, things we have to resist and push and use effort against and have good nutrition to be strong enough to, fight off those trials, to lift those weights. Otherwise, it does us no good. We build no muscle. And in this spiritual life, we're building spiritual muscle by resisting sin. And, some of us, we're going to need to remember that. Indeed. We have a telecast tonight from God's end-time apostle. It's going to jump into one of his far east specials tonight. Part 1. Next week we'll have part 2. Well, we might even go ahead and do part 2 tomorrow and keep those in sequence for this Sabbath weekend. All right, now I am looking for an address that I said I would post onto the weekly bulletin page. And I tell you what, even while we're live, I'm going to post this on the weekly bulletin page, and I'll find a way to flip over to it on our screen over here. And I got to keep my promise to do this, so we'll just do it live here at Bible study. Brethren, we're told in Scripture that where one member rejoices, we all rejoice with them. And when one member suffers, we all suffer with them. Now, can you have joy and suffering all in the same week? Well, yes, you can. One of our sisters in the church up in the Northeast and from Pennsylvania, Miss Jeannie Gladden, last week had one daughter become married for the first time, and so she gained a son-in-law. But that same week, she had another daughter lose her husband, who went to bed one night happy. Next morning, he did not awake out of his sleep. So, as Miss Gladden put it, there was a lot of devastation in the family. And all of that for her, the grandmother of those daughters of her daughter Elizabeth French, whose husband Jonathan French died overnight. At the same time she's suffering that devastation, she has another daughter who was getting married that week. She lost one son-in-law and gained another. So, yes, you can have suffering and rejoicing all in the same week. But you relate to those who are rejoicing with joy for them, and you relate to other members of the family who are being devastated by the death of a loved one, suffering with them. And now, any of you who might like to send a sympathy card, and I know some of you like to do that, and I will tell you personally, when at the time when my parents died, and my parents had asked me, I'm the oldest son in the family, and my parents had asked me if I would come back. My mother said, Stephen, will you just give away all your things and come back and help me and your dad? My mom had suffered a stroke, and she fell on some concrete, and my dad had a bad back situation and would not always be able to lift my mom. So Mom said, would you come back and help us in our old age? Well, thankfully, God had things both in the church and in my life where when I prayed about it, the answer was, don't you dare not go help your folks. And so I came back, got very close to both parents, and here's the point I'm trying to make. When each of my parents died, I really felt that sting of death. And when, especially after the second parent died, so that now both parents had died, when I would get a sympathy card from someone who, wrote a little something personal on it and let me know they were praying and asking God to comfort me in the loss, I well remember how deeply meaningful those cards were, especially those that came in the mail. And so I have just typed out the address, which Miss Gladden asked me to post on the weekly bulletin, where you would be able to send a sympathy card. I'm going to make a note to that effect. Sympathy cards related to death of husband, father, and of course he was a son-in-law to some. Jonathan French. Let's see, did I spell Jonathan right? Jonathan, T-H-A-N. I'm just going to say would be welcome. And the address is Elizabeth French, 13615 River Valley Court, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. And that is now posted on the weekly bulletin page. So I'm not going to repeat that again. You can go there and take a look at it. I wonder if I can do this. If we flip to our COGTV page here on this screen, there's a button in the menu column that takes you to Facebook. Let's see. Let me take this thing back to the home page first. That's easier to work from. All right, there's our home page. There's the banner at the top. Scroll down a little bit, and this should be showing our live stream. Well, I guess you got to hit that. There it goes. Actually, before I hit the button, it popped on through once the window was in view. And see, like I said, I'll scroll down a little bit. There's the banner at the top of the COGTV.org homepage. Scroll down to the first window, and you'll see the live stream coming through. And there's a small delay of anywhere from a couple of seconds to 20 or 30 seconds when you, from the time we're actually live streaming and your live stream window shows it. But this is what you see on our homepage right there is our live stream as of this moment, delayed by maybe whatever delay that particular computer picked up when we opened that page of maybe, it looks like that's maybe 20 seconds delayed. And sometimes it'll be like that, but it's still our live stream. And that you're seeing in that window. Now, what I wanted to go to, though, and show you is, let's see, in the menu buttons, I think we have a menu button. See, the menu button's over there on the right side. I just squinched the screen so you could see that entire thing. One of those buttons says, let's go in there and see if we can find it. We'll get that lower third out of the way for a second. This will give you a good chance to, if you've never tuned into our webpage, this will give you a good chance to take a look at it with me kind of guiding you through it. You keep scrolling down, and there's a button there that says live video. Let's see. There's supposed to be a button for Facebook. May have to do a little cleaning up on this thing just even yet. But what I wanted to do was go to the weekly bulletin page. So what I'll do, let's just do this even while I'm live. I'm going to go up to the top. You can't quite see the top, but I'm going to type in Facebook.com/ and I think it's prayer update. P-R-A, you can't see the line I'm typing, but P-R-A-Y-E-R, prayer update, I think is the name of the page that actually gets you to weekly bulletin. Okay, I'm wrong about that. Let's see. Prayer update. That's not the one you... Oh, there's too many... I typed Facebook twice. No wonder it won't get to that page. Okay, let's back that off, because I'm pretty sure prayer update is the one that gets us to... boom. Let's see. That gets us to the weekly bulletin. Sure enough, there it is. Now, if I can make this smaller, you can see, yeah. You see the weekly bulletin page on Facebook. I've got that on the screen there for you. Let me come in here with it. Okay, I'm going to pinch the screen's in front of me that's showing over my shoulder here. All right, weekly bulletin. If you scan down a little bit, that's a picture of Graham Davies, who died about 6 months ago, and asked us to pray what's become the theme for the Friday night Bible study and the Sabbath service, When the Saints Come Marching In. He wanted that played at his funeral and said, don't y'all mourn over me. Once I'm dead, I'm not going to know another thing and suffer or anything else. The next moment, I'm going to be rising up to meet Christ in the air ahead of you guys that remain alive. So don't mourn over me. Look forward to seeing me in the resurrection. Go have a beer at my funeral. That's what Graham actually said before he died, related to his funeral. Okay, I've got it right here. On the weekly bulletin page, you scroll down just a little bit, and you'll see this post that I just made here tonight while we're live. Sympathy cards related to the death of husband, Father Jonathan French would be welcome, and there's where you can send them to Jonathan's wife, Elizabeth French, mother of their 5 daughters, all minor age, all below 18 years old. 5 children, 5 daughters. You can send a sympathy card if you'd like to do that. It means a lot to people, and her mother knows it means a lot, and her mother asked for me to post this for her on Weekly Bulletin. So you can see I've done that. The address for Elizabeth French is 13615 River Valley Court, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. And even if it's just a handwritten card, means a lot when you've lost a loved one. All right, brethren, because it's been a very trying week, this is a Sabbath and a time when we should be edified, and we're, I think, best edified in these last days by hearing directly from God's end-time apostle. You know, and I realized something that I need to do when I listened to last week's service. I noticed that we are using a voice compressor that I believe has some reverb turned on it, and I either want to turn it off, because as I listened to it, I thought, wow, that's heavy reverb, I want to either turn it off or at least hit a button that'll turn it way, way down. So let me go to the page where those plugins are and see if I can find the one that's got that, doing that stuff. Let's see. Probably this one. So, sure enough, let's see. Oh yeah, sure enough, there's that reverb button. See if we can crank that thing way down. There, I got a button that cranked it way down. Let's see, we'll see what that does tonight. All right, so that shouldn't be screaming reverb at you. We're going to go now directly to God's end-time apostle as he takes us through a 1980 through telecast, as he takes us to the Far East for one of his travels there. And you can see the work that God did through his end-time apostle in reaching government leaders in the Far East with the fact that God has a work on this earth, giving a testimony and giving those people something about the truth of God's kingdom coming to rule the world, and how without that one world government, we won't have peace on this earth. Men under the sway of Satan just don't do it. You know, we've had a good government for hundreds of years in the United States, which influenced governments around the world. God used the United States and our twin brother, the modern-day descendants of Ephraim in the United Kingdom, as two of the big world superpowers to help put an end to round two of World War. World War is not over. We're just in a recess. Round three is coming, and coming probably, well, definitely coming sooner than later. And let's hear about God's apostles' end-time trip to the Middle East. Let's just mention, though, first tonight's date. As I mentioned in the opening, I gave the Hebrew date. It's the 17th day of the 8th month, and on God's calendar, and on the pagan Roman calendar that for a little while longer we have to put up with and live and interpose with, it's the 22nd day of October 2021. And let's see, the lower third is right in front of it. It's on the bottom row here, the second column at the bottom. There's October, and tonight is October 22nd, so we're in the fourth week. And after midnight, it'll be the 23rd for the Sabbath service in the morning. It'll still be that same date on God's calendar, though, that we're announcing for the Sabbath as the 17th day of the 8th month. Next holy days, almost 6 months away. We've got the rest of the 8th month to finish out, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and 12th month. And I think we may be in an extended year this year, so there may be an Adar 1 and an Adar 2, a 12th and a 13th month. And then Passover on the 14th day of the first month is, like I said, almost 6 months away. Last week it was pretty much almost right at 6 months. And now a week's gone by and we're just a little less than 6 months away from the next holy day. Next feast day, because Passover is the next feast day. It's not a holy day. You can work on that day. You don't have to assemble big. You can assemble in your home. You don't have to get online with us. You can, head of household can conduct the Passover service at home. You're welcome. We will stream the last Passover service Mr. Armstrong conducted at headquarters in Pasadena before he died. And you're welcome to tune in with us and just follow along as Mr. Armstrong conducts that Passover service, memorial service, with the foot washing and the taking of the bread, eating of the bread and the taking of the wine. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Let me see. What else did I have up here we might want to take a look at? Just a reminder that on our homepage, we've updated the calendar page to show the feast days for 2022, beginning with the Passover in April, on the 14th, the evening of the 14th of April. That's a Thursday night. And then it shows here the rest of the feast and holy days for the remainder of 2022, with the night to be much observed, Friday night, April 15, then the first day of unleavened bread and the last day of unleavened bread in April, and second Passover for those who unintentionally or for some reason are unable to observe the first Passover, and then Pentecost, Sunday, June 5 this year, trumpets, September 26. They're listed right there on the calendar page. So let's see. I won't belabor that. Let's come back and let's see what else I got. Oh yeah, just a reminder that if you do go, let me flip back over here. Let's see. Now I've still got the bulletin page up, but I think I can hit the back button. I think any of you who use a laptop know how the back button works. I think you can do something similar on the cell phone things. You just hit the back button, you go back. All right, we're back to the home page. I thinned it out. Let's see if I can widen it. Yeah, okay. All right. What I wanted to show you is, I think you can still see it. I squinched it and made it kind of thin, but in the menu column on the right side, I've made those menu buttons bigger so you get your finger on them easier, even on a little small mobile device. They show up a lot better, and you can get your finger on those buttons easier, the buttons on the right side. And if you hit the one called calendar, it's kind of even with Sabbath TV up here. Let's see if I can widen that out just a hair. Oop, well, I widened it out way too far. Let's see. I used two fingers instead of a finger and thumb. Let's see. Can I get it? You know how they can be, friends. You pinch around. Sometimes it goes further than you want it to. All right. At least you can see it. It cut off a little bit. Our view cuts off a little bit of the word calendar, but you see where the menu button for calendar is. Now, I've got a computer in front of me, and I'm going to reach in front of me and punch that calendar button, and it'll take you to a special page that shows you today's Hebrew calendar date. So let me hit that button, and there we are. No, wait a minute. That takes us to the calendar page. Yeah, all right. Then, because we were on the home page. And then if you scroll up, you see on the calendar page, the calendar menu button is grayed out because we're on that page. But if you go down two more, I think I've activated it so that even if you press it while it's grayed out on this page, the calendar page, it'll do the same thing that this menu button called Date Today that's in view toward the bottom right side does. It shows you the date on God's holy sacred calendar today. And sometimes I like to just verify that I got today's date right in our lower third. And this automated feature on our webpage, cogtv.org, on the Date Today page, is showing that as of right now in this time zone, it's the 17th day of Sheshvan. Now, if you're wondering, what day of the what month is Sheshvan on God's holy sacred calendar? You know, God only numbered them, and somehow later they came up with names from Babylon for the names and other places too. Well, Sheshvan, as you see on this page, you scroll down on this Date Today page, it shows you Sheshvan, or I've got it highlighted in yellow, is month number 8. So this is showing that today's date is the 17th day of the 8th month. Now, let's put our lower third back on screen and see if I got that right. Sure enough, I've got it listed as the 17th day of the 8th month, and that's what our Date Today button is showing up. After sunset tomorrow night, it'll change to the 18th day of the 8th month. So we've got that program that's working, and you know, maybe you just want to say, Stephen, I'll just be happy to look at your lower third, you know, but this is one of several cross-checks. Another cross-check, I need to take a good picture from some of the pages in Arthur Spear's The Comprehensive Hebrew Calendar, because side by side he lists the Hebrew calendar and the Roman Gregorian calendar side by side, month by month, year by year, all the way in this particular book from 1900 through 2100. This book covers 200 years of side-by-side calendars, Hebrew and Roman. And this is a very trusted, very reliable, very well worked out, long time proven source of the Hebrew calendar dates. So yes, some of your ministry will check it via Arthur Spear. That's one source, and then these online devices that give it to you is another source, and there are multiple ones of these. You know, some of them make you put in today's date. We do it for you. Right on that bottom line down there, as it's saying, the Roman Gregorian date today is 10/22, the date for Friday. And after sunset, this thing automatically figures sunset in your local area. It may take it 20 minutes or a half hour to take effect, but if you wait an hour after sunset to be sure, you've got the date. And if you look at it before sunset, just know that when the sun sets, it's one more date to add to it, you know. So even if it doesn't do it right away at sunset, you know, we're well after sunset here where I am, and so it's taken effect, and it's now calling today the 17th, where earlier today, on the 22nd, it was calling today the 16th day of the 8th month, as it was until sunset. Okay, all right, enough boring you with the calendar stuff. Let's get on over to where we'll find Mr. Armstrong ready to go with tonight's Far East Special, Part 1. Here we go.
Violence and armed aggression in the world is escalating, and it seems to be increasing day by day and week by week. Look at the trouble spots in the world as they are right now. The troubles in Poland, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, the Iraq-Iran war, the troubles in North Ireland between North Ireland and Ireland, the troubles in Central America, El Salvador and other countries there, communism getting a hold even in our doorstep to the south of us. And now Soviet Union President Brezhnev has vowed to retaliate if President Reagan's defense program continues to build up. And that means a buildup of nuclear weapons all over this world. And it could erase all human life from this planet Earth, and that includes your life and mine. Many smaller nations have now joined the nuclear club. Many smaller nations have nuclear weapons today. Now, there are madmen in the world, madmen like Idi Amin, like Gaddafi. And if a madman in charge of one of the smaller nations even could set off a nuclear war, it could escalate to the point where it would draw in the Soviet Union, the United States, and it could erase all human life from this planet Earth, and that includes your life and mine. On a recent speaking tour in the Far East, I found uneasiness and I found a consciousness of this trouble beginning to escalate all over. I want to tell you a little about that trip. I made a stop off at Hong Kong. I spoke to a group, quite a large group of Plain Truth subscribers who were readers of the Plain Truth. That's one of the world's mass circulation magazines, of which I founded, of which I am editor-in-chief, and I want to tell you more about it in the end. Then in Bangkok, in Thailand, I spoke there again to a number of Plain Truth subscribers who were reading the Plain Truth magazine. Then we flew up to the north of Thailand to Chiang Mai, and there King Bhumipol sent his own mountain jeep to meet me and to bring me up the mountain to his mountain palace where he was at the time. I found the king, who is a friend of mine. I have spent many hours with him, very much concerned right now with the problem that is a world problem in the drug traffic, and especially with the smuggling of heroin and opium into and on through Thailand and out to the world from the ports in Bangkok. Then I went on to Manila. There I was guest speaker before the Rotary Club, also at a banquet of 1,000 members of the MPM, that is a certain Philippine movement or club. Then a meeting of 60 or more ministers and wives from all over the Philippine Islands, ministers of the Worldwide Church of God. And then a meeting with President Marcos. And I had two wonderful and lovely meetings with President Marcos' mother. I went over to her penthouse where she resides, and we spent 2 hours together, where she told me all about the rearing of her son, President Marcos. Then I had 2 public meetings in Manila. Now, these meetings were held in the PICC, that's the Philippine International Convention Center. There were about 4,200 at one meeting, 4,500 at another. Then from that, I went on to Tokyo, where I had a meeting of between 80 and 100 Plain Truth subscribers who were regular readers of the Plain Truth in Japan. Then a banquet at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo with many, many distinguished people, and there were ambassadors representing, it was 20 or 21 other nations who were present, and many of them with their wives. I was the guest of honor and the speaker there. And now I would like to show you the highlights that will be narrated by Art Gilmore of that banquet.
At the banquet held in Tokyo's Imperial Hotel, Mr. Armstrong was guest of honor. Here to listen to his address were many leaders of Japanese society. Mr. Armstrong was especially honored by the presence at his table of His Imperial Highness Prince Mikasa and Princess Mikasa. Also in attendance were 11 members of the Japanese Diet. The Diet, elected by the people, is the highest Congress of national power and the sole law-making instrument of the country. The Japanese Diet selects the nation's prime minister from among its own members. Also present to hear Mr. Armstrong's message were ambassadors of 20 other countries, including Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Peru, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Tunisia, Poland, Spain, Sweden, Turkey, Iran, Israel, Kuwait, Lebanon, Syria, Indonesia, Thailand, and the People's Republic of China. Before his address, Mr. Armstrong was introduced by several prominent Japanese leaders. The first introduction was given by Mr. Tokuo Yamashita. Mr. Yamashita is not only a member of the Japanese Diet since 1974, but also is one of 12 members of the Diet who consider themselves Mr. Armstrong's Japanese sons.
We wanted to welcome our father, Dr. Herbert Armstrong, for some time. It has been a year since he visited us last, and we are very, very happy to welcome Dr. Armstrong again. When we learned that Dr. Armstrong would be visiting Japan, those of us who have been nurtured by him his sons, organized this banquet. Dr. Armstrong has carried his mission beyond race, nationality, and socio-political viewpoint. He seeks to serve people all over the world, giving his virtue to almost every corner of the world. Without expecting any reward, he just gives and gives and gives.
The second introduction was presented by Mr. Bunsai Sato, another of Mr. Armstrong's Japanese sons.
I'm Bunsai Sato.
Mr. Sato, a former Vice Minister of Transportation, is an author and a member of the Diet. Mr. Sato is currently serving as chairman of the Public Relations Committee for the Liberal Democratic Party, the majority party of the Diet.
It was exactly 10 years ago, January of 1972, when we represented this country at the San Clemente Conference, where our late Prime Minister Sato met with former President Nixon. It was the first time that we were received by Dr. Armstrong. That was 10 years ago. The conference was a very crucial summit between the U.S. and Japan to discuss the reversion of Okinawa. At that time, Dr. Armstrong gave us strategic support, you might say, behind the scenes to make our activities more effective at the conference. That same summer, you may recall that Prime Minister Tanaka met with President Nixon in Hawaii. At that time again, Dr. Armstrong supported our activities. Recognizing his great contribution to U.S.-Japan relations, His Majesty the Emperor of Japan conferred upon him the Second Order of the Sacred Treasure. Dr. Armstrong, who so kindly taught us people-to-people diplomacy and diplomacy among the parliamentarians. He is a most honored teacher. But today again we are very happy to see our father, Dr. Armstrong, who calls us my sons, with tears in his eyes. We, the members of the Diet, welcome you as our grandfather. Grandpa, welcome back to Tokyo. I sincerely hope and wish that, Dr. Armstrong, you keep your strong health and spirit so you can carry your God-given task, your great mission to all the world. I thank you very much.
After the first two speakers, the audience was privileged to hear from His Imperial Highness Prince Mikasa, the brother of Emperor Hirohito. Prince Mikasa, a longtime close friend of Mr. Armstrong, dating back to their initial meeting in 1968, asked the entire audience to join him in honoring Mr. Armstrong with a toast.
Dr. Armstrong, ladies and gentlemen, I've been associated with Dr. Armstrong for a number of years, and personally I forgot when I first met Dr. Armstrong. So I asked him, when did we first meet? And he remembered very clearly. It was in 1968. Since then, Dr. Armstrong has been very kind to me, and I have kept a close friendship with him. Not only that, but as you heard in the speeches, Dr. Armstrong has helped the academic affairs of Japan, as well as world peace. We were told that this July, you will be celebrating your 90th anniversary. This is a most festive occasion. But as we well know nowadays, the longevity of the human race is extending, so that I hope you will live a long, healthy life, well beyond 90 years. For that, we give this toast.
Dr. Armstrong.
While Mr. Armstrong spoke, Professor Fujita of Tokyo's Waseda University translated in Japanese. For brevity, only portions of the translation are included.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I have so many friends here in Japan, all the way, I believe, from His Majesty, His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor, and His Majesty's brother, Prince Mikasa, many of your congressmen who consider themselves my Japanese sons. And I am honored that so many of them are here tonight.
私、日本につきましては、お国の天皇陛下をはじめといたしまして、天皇陛下の弟宮でいらっしゃいます三笠宮殿下をはじめ、私の息子を称してくださる国会議員の皆様方をはじめとして、たくさんの友人を持っておることを本当に心から感謝しております。
I've been coming to Japan now for many years. I'm a little hoarse tonight. You'll have to excuse me. I was speaking quite a while last night to many readers of our magazine, The Plain Truth. And I find that I'm a little hoarse. But as I was telling them last night, conditions in the world have worsened since I was last here. The weapons now exist that can erase all human life from off this earth if we have another war, which will be a nuclear war. I have seen so many things happen in this world in the almost 90 years that I have lived. I have seen miraculous things happen. I have seen awesome progress. But also I have seen appalling troubles and evils happening in the world, and it is becoming worse all the time. I have to ask why? Why the paradox of awesome progress and awesome accomplishments, sending men to the moon and back, jet plane travel, the miracle of television, the many things that we have today, and still so many troubles and so much sorrow and sickness all over the world. Educators and scientists have said, if you give us enough knowledge, we will solve all our problems and we will cure all our evils. Dr. Clark Kerr, who was president of the University of California, said that the universities of today are factories. And what do they manufacture? They manufacture knowledge. So in the decade of the 1960s, the world's fund of knowledge doubled, but the world's troubles doubled also in the same decade. So there's something wrong with our knowledge. If we ask why, we have to go back to the very beginning of all civilization. The oldest recorded history in the world is the book called the Bible. And it says that the first man, one man that was created, and one woman, his wife, and all life has sprung from them. And that first man had to make a choice between two kinds of knowledge, and they represented two ways of life. One way was the way of love, which is outflowing toward other people. I call that the way of give, and the other way was the way of get. I want to take away from other people. That first man chose the way of get instead of give. And so the society that started through him has continued on, everybody trying to get from everybody else.
で、その最初に作られた男はですね、その2つの道のうちの後者を選んだのでありまして、与える代わりに自分で全部自分のために取っていくという、そういう道を選んだ結果、人類はそれ以来今日までですね、人のものを取ると自分を中心に考える、そういう生き方を続けるようになったのでございます。
And all civilization has been based on that principle. It is the way of competition. It is the way of vanity. It is the way of envy and jealousy toward other people. And it has resulted in unhappiness until it seems that the whole world is discontented today and no one seems to be happy. Now, the first man was made with a mind that is capable of acquiring knowledge to deal with things out of the ground. But the first man denied his maker, and he did not know how to get along with other people. So we have built a civilization on earth of government, of education, an educational system, of religion, of society, and all is based on the selfish motive of get and of self-centeredness. So we have been able to be very successful in dealing with things, with matter out of the ground. But in this spirit of competition, it has resulted in war. It's fighting in families at home. It's fighting between neighbors. It's fighting between groups. And it's fighting between nations.
でしかしながら人間にはそういう競争心というものがございますから、その競争心のためにですね、戦争が起こる、家庭の中でも争いが起こる、近隣とも喧嘩をする、あるいはグループごとにそういう戦いをする、国の間で戦争をするというそういう事態が起きてきているものでございます。
And this whole system that has grown has denied the supreme God, our maker and our creator. And so now it is like an editorial in a very large American magazine said, it would seem that the only hope of this world today lies in the intervention of an unseen strong hand from someplace. Now, Almighty God, the Creator, is that supreme unseen hand, and He is going to intervene. And before man destroys mankind with nuclear weapons, God is going to intervene and save this whole world. And He is going to compel this whole world and all nations to be happy by living the way that will make us happy. And all of this is going to happen in our living generation. And He has sent me here tonight as a voice crying in the wilderness of miseducation, of wrong ways of life, of a wrong civilization, to tell you that it is really going to happen. We're going to learn to live the right way and going to have peace even yet.
で、全能の神はですね、今日私を荒野に叫ぶ声といたしまして、このところに使わせてくださいまして、皆様方にですね、人類の滅亡を救うには本当に神様が備えたもうた、神様が作ってくださったその道を生きるしかその方法はないということを訴えるために、今晩私をここに使わせてくださったと思うのでございます。
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
皆様方本当にありがとうございました。
And now, ladies and gentlemen of the television audience, you need to know why this paradox of such awesome accomplishment in the world at the same time of such appalling evils, heartaches, troubles, suffering, anguish, and such violence and destruction all over the world. Why? There has to be a cause for every effect. And where are we going from here? What is going to happen now? There's no program like this. There's no work like we're conducting on the basis of give and not get. We're not out to get. We do not solicit members, church members, anything of the kind was ever solicited. They have all come of their own accord. However, if you only could know it, all have been called by God himself. In a sense, they have not been volunteers either, because Jesus Christ said, no man can come to me except the Father which sent me draw him. Did you know that that is in the Bible? There are many things in the Bible that will shock you and amaze you. Until next time, Herbert W. Armstrong, goodbye, friends.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Armstrong, and thank you to all of you who are tuned in and listening tonight. Woo, we lost our player. A fascinating program, was it not? When you consider what we just saw in that video with those Japanese sons of Mr. Armstrong, they've adopted him as their grandfather. That whole club, man after man, speaking about that special connection where God set that up for those men to highly esteem God's end-time apostle for the purpose of him being able to get a witness to those people, and by it being recorded, as we did tonight, it can be shared with the rest of the world. It's online. People, by doing a Google search, can find these telecasts in an instant. They no longer have to wait until the telecast is aired, where we had to spend thousands of dollars for that airtime. It's now just stored where people can freely find it and watch it on the World Wide Web. A new open door for a work God did through his end-time apostle that's being done even more greatly now by its accessibility than when Mr. Armstrong was alive. How about that for getting bang out of your buck? I mean, God himself, out of tithe and offering money that went to this work, God did that work through Mr. Armstrong and has preserved it and is still using that work he did through Mr. Armstrong. You know, Mr. Armstrong said God would not let him die until the work that God had given him and us backing him up, that God had given him, Mr. Herbert Armstrong, to do as the end-time apostle. God wouldn't let him die until that work God gave him to do was finished. And it was finished, and now it's preserved, and we're getting double, triple, quadruple, multiply it however much you want. We're getting mileage out of that same work. It doesn't need to be duplicated or replicated. I'm sorry, all of you vanity plate, blankety blank, this or that Church of God groups out there trying to redo what God did through Mr. Armstrong. You're falling way short of it. And you're not doing it as effectively, and you're keeping people, in some instances, from hearing it directly from, as Mr. Armstrong would say from time to time, the horse's mouth, to use an old expression. To get it direct from God's end-time apostle. That's the best way. So there's hardly a program goes by where we live stream we're not featuring Mr. Armstrong speaking. We'll pick up tomorrow with part 2. And let me think. Is there anything in the way of prayers that brethren need that I should mention in tonight's Bible study before we sign off? And I'm going to sign us off early. Instead of an hour and a half, we'll just do an hour tonight and let everybody get your own prayer and Bible study in and that kind of thing. And yeah, I think we should never stop, for at least for now, until God completely heals it. We should not stop praying for the two fellows out in California, Dane Holst and his son Jacob, with Jacob still having some problem with the epilepsy and seizures. And thank you, one of our regular listeners here, I don't know personally, I actually haven't met Dane and Jacob in person, but we talk on this Facebook. See me, sometimes I'm in a very relaxed position when I'm talking to them after a live stream. I'm sometimes, some of you don't realize, sometimes it'll really wear me thin to try to keep a program interesting and going live and working to get it on time with you every time. Let me see, I got a little better tonight at it. But Dane could still use prayers, and Dane and Jacob are discussing, I'm probably going to go a little more than an hour. I think this is okay. I got a few scriptures I want to share that from a book I picked up the other day. But Dane and Jacob, the father of Jacob, Dane, and Jacob himself are discussing some possible remedies. One of the sisters in the church mentioned how her daughter used to have some seizure, epilepsy problems, and she found out it was, in her child's case, it was curable by changing her diet. And I think that's a possibility in many cases, but you got to find that diet. You got to know the person's chemistry type. Mr. Armstrong pointed out there are at least two major chemical types. One of them is body types. One of them is a person that's got a calcium type chemistry, which Mr. Armstrong did, and which I do too. So I know I need calcium in my diet. And a good nutritional medical doctor, they use the term medical doctor, but it's really a nutritionalist who studied, the body and studied it under what would be the medical school type, they name it medical. But those nutritional medical doctors, very few of them use any medicines at all. They prescribe to you various types of food supplements and vitamins. And Barry Kendall in California helped us find one in Alabama, way up north, 150 miles from here, and it was Mr. Collins and I felt it was well worth the trip each time and the fee that we'd have to pay to go up there and get his blood analyzed and to have just exactly the diet he needed to eat to help him with cancer. And after only 6 weeks, when I believe God led us to this, and even Psalm 104 that talks about healing has a scriptural reference to the fact that there are things you can put in your mouth that God made for healing. Let's turn there real quickly. Let's see. I think it's Psalm 103 and verse 4, I believe is what it's going to be. I said 104, I meant 103, chapter 103, and verse 4. Let me see if I'm hitting that right. If you want to turn there with me, again, Psalm 103, I'm almost there, 106, 102, 103. Verse 4. Let's back up to verse 3 of Psalm 103. And talking about, bless the Lord, it starts out in verse 1, O my soul, and all that is within me, David said, bless his holy name. That's just exactly the way Jesus Christ in Matthew 6 says we should start our prayers by praising God's name. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. David's doing that in verse 1. Bless his holy name. Verse 2, bless the eternal, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. Then verse 3, who strengthens, God, who strengthens all your iniquities. He forgives. Who forgives all your iniquities. When Christ would do a healing, sometimes he would say, take your bed and get up and walk. And other times, for the same purpose, he would say, your sins are forgiven. Who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases. And on the heels of that, I don't mean to play with that over much, but, heals all your diseases. Right after that, through David, God says in verse 4, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness, has tender mercies. It's verse 5 that we want, that I'm focusing on for the purpose of what you eat can help heal you. Who satisfies your mouth with good things, tasty, good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. So don't tell me diet can't affect your health. God says it can and it does because God himself made those things to help cure you of this and that and the other thing. Today you see many little video ads for this and that as men learn more and more about the many different things that God made us to help make us well. And like this video with Mr. Armstrong, one of the men pointed out, the longevity, the length of man's days is being increased in these latter days. Now, God himself said in the Bible, he put a cap on it at 120 back at the time of the flood. because he said, men wax worse and worse, and if I let them go on living older and older and multiplying more and more, we'll have a situation where we need to have another flood. Except he promised with a sign of a rainbow, which men have perverted today, that we won't have any more floods. So he'd have to find another way to destroy all mankind if we got that bad again. And we are told by Christ, we were told while Christ was here on this earth, that in the last days it would be as in the days of Noah. Men would be back at it again, sinning big time. And we can see that. You get on social media, wham, they hit you with all kinds of immodest stuff and crazy wrongful doings and hateful acts, murderous acts, hateful word, beating people up and actually even murdering them, shown right on social media now as a form of entertainment and to get likes. Dastardly. But I did want to take a quick look on social media, and let's see, on our Sabbath service page, I want to thank one of our regular viewers, a member in God's church, who posted on one of the on the Sabbath service last week, after we mentioned the need in prayer for Jacob Holst in California, who wants the prayer. Dominic, you posted publicly on the Sabbath service, so you shouldn't mind my making a mention on the live stream, because this is public and that was public. Dominic mentioned publicly, he said, that's exactly the way I feel. I've been, whoa, let's see, that was a different message. Let me find the one where let me see. Dominic, did you tell me that publicly or in a private message? Okay, he mentioned it here on a public post. I am getting seizures twice per week, so we can add, if you will, brethren, add Dominic Mancini's name to your list of prayers for those who need prayer for healing from seizures. Dominic says, I'm getting seizures twice per week. I don't know why. I also have epilepsy. Jacob, you could pray for Dominic, and Dominic is praying for you. And if you pray for one another, God will hear that and multiply the prayers. And brethren, if we follow the instruction God gave us to, when one member rejoices, rejoice with him. When one member suffers, we suffer with him. If we can all put ourselves in the shoes of Dominic, of Jacob, and pray for these men, that these brothers in the church, that God will help them know what they need to do to get that whatever in each person's case needs to come into balance to help that. And I probably should say this, because one of my FaceTime phone, the battery conked out as we were going to get back together later. I did set up another phone, so I don't know if you tried to call me before I got that one set up, but I did try to call you and couldn't reach you back, Dane, Jacob. But let me just say this here, because without going into the details, let me just say the bottom line of a thought I had. I did write this to you. I hope you saw it, that I said, if your dad comes up with an idea, as long as you are under his house, now you can speak up and say, Dad, I don't want to do that. But the bottom line of, if your dad says, no, this is the way we're going to do it, you've got a choice at that moment. As long as you're living under his roof, you need to do what he says. Now, and a minor has to do that. But now when you're an adult, if you're still under your dad's roof, you got to do what he says. But you've got the option as an adult to go somewhere else. But, but on the other hand, as long as you stay under the roof, you need to do what your dad says. I mean, we have to obey our fathers in the Lord. And so there's the bottom line of where I have to go with that, even though that may not be what a person may want to hear. But We don't do it out of meanness. We do it out of love. You know, God tells a lot of things we might like to do, brethren, that, oh, shoot, that would be so much fun. And God says, I can't do it. God's trying to save your neck. You know, and if we go to a specific example of lust, God says if you follow through on that lust and do certain actions, you create a fire in the belly type of situation. And God says, save yourself from that. He says, don't do it. The body says, I want to do it. God says, don't. What are you going to do? Listen to the body that's swayed and influenced by the devil? Or are you going to listen to God's word where God says, don't, and you don't? And then like that song we often sing on the Sabbath from Psalm 1, blessed and happy is the man who never walks astray. It's like the two blessing and cursing chapters, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28. We obey God. He enumerates in the first portion of each of those chapters blessings that he gives us both collectively as a body of people in a nation and individually. When we obey God, God gives us blessings. Then in the second portion of each chapter, Deuteronomy 26, Leviticus 28, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, I hope I said that correct. He says if we don't obey him, just the opposite of the blessings, cursings, and he enumerates what they are. And when you get it, you see, oh, well, we are rewarded according to our works. When we do good works, we are blessed. Now, that will not buy you eternal life, but it'll help you become accounted worthy of being given the gift of eternal life. So it's true that you cannot earn salvation, but you can earn a reward. The man who took 10 talents or took 1 talent and multiplied it to 10 was awarded with 10 cities. The one who multiplied 1 talent to 5 got 5 cities. The one that doubled 1 for 1 got 1 city. The man that went and hid it in a bush or dug a hole and stuck it in the ground, whatever he did, he hid it. I safe kept it. I hid it. I protected it. He gave Christ his 1 back. He said, well, you get nothing in return. I'm going to give that 1 you gave back to me now to that man that developed 10. We are rewarded according to our works. And we eat right, we get healthy. You got to figure that out, though. It can take a whole lot of work and effort. You may need a professional person that you pay to take your blood and to help figure it out for you, what you need. That is one thing. There may be other things involved. And yes, sometimes our fathers are right to say we need a professional person involved here, but you got to get the right professional person, and everybody's got to feel comfortable with that. And the person who submits to it may want to know, am I permanently digging a hole for myself I'll never get out of, that you may not want to do, and everybody should probably listen to that as well. But let's, brethren, pray for one another. I've got a page called Weekly Bulletin open. I showed it to you early in tonight's program that you can post on yourself. You don't have to wait for me. You don't have to get my approval. If there's a prayer you need, you're welcome to post it on the Weekly Bulletin page. That's why that page is there. You can submit items to it yourself. Now, if you do something crazy and I see it, I'm probably going to garbage can it, but if it's a request for healing and something you need, I'm going to let it fly, because that's a way you can let other people know. And the second part of healing in James 5, the first part, is to call for an elder, let him pray over you, anoint you with oil and pray over you. But there's a part 2 to it. You don't stop there. You don't just call the elder and get an anointing either in person or by anointed cloth. God tells you to confess your faults one to another. He's saying, tell your fellow brethren about your illness and ask them to pray for you. And God wants to see that kind of love for one another. And as he hears these multiple prayers for someone who needs some kind of healing, and brethren, you should be showing that kind of love. And pray when you hear somebody needs prayer. Don't just write it down and say, yeah, yeah. No, take that paper you wrote it down on or the mental note you made and go get on your knees and sound off to God. Ask God to help that person. He does hear that, and he wants to hear that, and he does respond to that. We know that. So let's help one another in that way. And, where I may have shortcomings and not get back to you just exactly right or when you want me to, I'm one person. I have limitations on me, and I run into problems myself once in a while. At least at airtime for Sabbath service, thank God for this, we can bring it together among us. And I'm working on some things where we may be able to, those that like to fellowship here, where we can have some areas of fellowship that you'll appreciate. I don't have it ready yet, but I'm working on a half-hour video special of the band that is offered to play for us during the feast. They would have played during this last feast, but we still had after effects of COVID where venues, places to dance were not open like they should be. Too many restrictions. Who wants to dance while wearing a mask? I mean, I guess you could do it, but there are videos now that talk about how a mask cuts off the flow of oxygen and holds carbon dioxide in, which causes you to rebreathe it. And it makes you more susceptible to getting COVID by wearing a mask, one doctor is saying, than if you did not. But you go in these places where they require it to get in the store, you wear it for the time you're in the store, and you comply with the ordinances of men. We're instructed to do that. And the unfortunate thing, if you're working a job and you got to wear it all day. Now, I did when I took a job during COVID for about 5 months over at Walmart, a local one. I needed to pay off some roofing bill repairs, and I did everything I could to help get that money to pay for the roofing here over where we broadcast from, so our equipment wouldn't be ruined. And I had to do what the employer said to do. In fact, part of my job was make sure people coming in the store were wearing a mask, unless they would say the magic words, "I have a health problem from wearing a mask." And really, we all do, frankly, when it cuts off your oxygen. Or the other magic words were, "I can't wear it for religious reasons." And those who could say that truthfully from a good conscience, that was another way that I was allowed to let a person in without wearing a mask. Now, I did have to radio to the people inside and say, a person fitting this description is coming in without a mask because of a medical problem. They can't breathe with it, or because of a religious reason, whatever. And that's just so that nobody else in the store would bother them. Now, we did have, just tell you this real quick, we did have customers come out and, believe it or not, chew me out because there's somebody in the store not wearing a mask. And I'd have to say, they have that legal right because they reported that they have a medical problem or a religious problem with wearing a mask. And the government allows that, and we have to allow that. "Oh, yeah, but you shouldn't let them in your store. It's your private store." Ma'am, I have to do what my boss over me here says do if I want to have this job, as long as it doesn't conflict with what God tells me to do. If my boss says come and work on the Sabbath, then I have to say, "Sorry, boss, I ain't going to be there." Well, you lose your job. Well, we'll see you in court. There are laws that say but all right, we're going to another subject. I don't want to go there right now, but I want to tell you about this. Let's pray for one another, brethren. I've got some scriptures that I put on the screen. All right, I found Dominic, so I'm going to come back where we got this page. Let's see. Let's go to the Bible screen. Let me change this out. I'm going to need to change it while I get the player back up anyway, so that I didn't mean to go there. I meant to, well, where is that button? Oh, it's over here. I meant to come in with you on this screen. Okay. Here are some scriptures I had lined up that I thought Mr. Armstrong was going to say during the telecast tonight. Maybe he did, actually, and perhaps I just missed them, but where he was doing it. But let me run these by. Daniel 3. talks about a time we see more and more women getting high offices in government over men. And this is a verse, Isaiah 3:12, speaking of that, we would see this is one of the things we'll see in the last days. Children, foreigners are their oppressors. We have more and more foreigners getting into government positions over the people in the United States, the modern-day descendants of Manasseh, and in the United Kingdom, the modern-day descendants of Ephraim. And women ruling over mankind. O my people, they which lead thee cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths. You know, God put a wonderful thing in women, emotion and love and motherhood and that kind of thing. And that's great in the home. Children need that. But in a government position, that type of emotion conflicts with the kind of thinking God wants men in offices to have, where you give mercy where it's deserved, not mercy to everybody always, or not to where it's leaning to one. Even men mess it up. So I'm going to go on to this next verse. All right, it speaks of time we're looking to the next major event in prophecy when there will be great tribulation. And the first four seals are ripe and ready to go. So this thing could happen anytime God turns to Christ and says, let's wrap it up. Open the fifth seal. By open it, I don't mean to our understanding. I mean open Pandora's box and let that great tribulation come out and start the 3.5-year countdown clock. God could say that to Christ at any moment, because those four seals that we're told, when they become full bloom, fifth seal begins. And it's up to the Father to say to Christ, okay, now, it's in his control. That timing affects when Jesus Christ returns. He returns 3.5 years after the Great Tribulation begins. And because of that, Mr. Armstrong said, we probably will not know the exact day on which the Great Tribulation began until Christ has come, and we look back and count it backward and say, it began on that day, and we see this event. Because if you did know exactly when it began, you'd be able to work it out and count it down to Christ is coming back on this day. And God's keeping that so that no man knows the day or the hour. Now, we might know the week once the fifth seal opens up, but we won't know the day or the hour, and God has to work that with finesse right before mankind would have blown all life off the face of the earth. All right, let's see. And except those days, see, he has to shorten it too. Yeah. So he's got that, he'll factor that in when he starts the Great Tribulation. But that reminds me to remind all of us how Christ said in verse 20 of Matthew 24 that we should be praying that our flight, meaning the flight for the great escape, the escape from the Great Tribulation, for those who are accounted worthy to escape, as God talks about in Luke 21, verse 36, we need to pray that our flight be not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath day. And with winter fast approaching, we had some cold nights this week where I am, which was a good reminder. Yes, Lord, help our escape be as Christ instructed us to pray, not in the winter. Now, if we all pray that and pray that enough, that buys us at least time till the spring. So if we're saying, hey, God, help our flight be not in the winter, we're leaving it open for the summer. And Christ didn't say, also pray it won't be in spring. In other words, you'd be praying, well, don't ever let that flight come, which would be, in effect, praying against the instruction Christ gave us to pray thy kingdom come. Brother, am I making sense? Does Scripture make sense to you? If it doesn't, you need to spend more time in God's Word and on your knees, as we all should be doing. I want to get to some verses that are from this cute little book I bought. That are verses from the Bible. And this is something we should keep in mind too, brethren, even as people ask us questions about our faith and our beliefs. We need to keep in mind, unless God calls them, No man can come to Christ except the Father, which sent Christ, draw the man or the woman, and I'll raise him up at the last day, those he's called and chosen and given his Spirit for the spring harvest. Otherwise, they are predestined to the fall harvest. You know, another way to say that is they're called and set aside for the fall harvest, which is a great, colossal, wonderful, magnificent harvest. The devil will be put away. It'll be a wonderful time for people. Billions of people will be popping up out of their graves and wondering, hey, am I in heaven or am I in hell? No, brother, you're still on this earth. Put these clothes on. You know, because God's going to put flesh back on their bones and sinews and what all he says in Ezekiel 37, and breath back into their lungs. He's talking about a physical resurrection that's going to give them a 100-year period to understand the truth, with the devil putting away, who deceived, Revelation 12:9, a few people here, a few people there. No, Revelation 12 verse 9 says, the devil deceives, somebody shout it out there, write it, the whole world. Right? Fellas in New York, give me a rah-rah. Yay, right. The devil deceives the whole world and fills the human mind with attitudes of vanity, jealousy, lust, greed. What did I leave out? All forms of, and other forms of just vanity, vainness, evil and wrong. All right, here's what I want to get to. Okay, that's just a repeat of John 6:44, where Christ said, therefore, I said unto you, as he said in verse 44, that no man can come to me except it was given unto him of my Father. And then I mentioned to you the promise Christ makes that if you do a couple of prerequisites, you can be accounted worthy to escape, to take the great flight referenced in Revelation 12, verse 14, via two wings of a great eagle, symbolic, very likely, tell him, John Bryan, modern jet aircraft. Or God could do it literally, right? He could. It's up to God. He can put an eagle in your backyard and say, come on, that eagle, that great eagle that I created, just like I created a great fish for Jonah, is going to take you lovingly in its claws, but firmly, and fly you from here to the wilderness overseas. All right. The worst kind of modern jet aircraft probably be better than that in the long run, but for some nuts who might enjoy doing it that way, you might see somebody flying by clawed up in the claws of an eagle. I'm just saying God could do it that way. I'm not saying he will, but he has that option. All right, and you can be accounted worthy of two things. In time order, first of all, to escape via that Revelation 12:14 flight, all these things that shall come to pass, beginning with the opening of the fifth seal, great tribulation, and be accounted worthy to stand later, 3.5 years later, before the Son of Man in the first resurrection. Now, I think we're going to go to some scriptures that are in this cute little book. I've got a marker in there I'll take out. I bought this while I was at lunch today, and they had a choice books rack inside the restaurant. Thanks to them, it made delightful reading while some people I was waiting on to join me for lunch misunderstood and thought I meant tonight when I got a hold of them. I said, no, I do a live video stream. You know that I do a live video stream, Bible study on Friday night. And so while I wound up at lunch, dinner alone, a late afternoon dinner alone, lunch alone, I grabbed this little book while waiting on my meal, and it's got Bible verses in it. This little book's called Prayers and Promises for Men. Really, it's for women too. The verses, every one of these verses apply equally to men and women. And under perseverance, he's got categories throughout the book. And this page has a category called perseverance in it. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, just 4 scriptures there. I wanted to share these with you because as I read them, I thought, Perseverance is one of the 7 laws of success, and these verses relate to that law of success. The first verse is from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24. And the book quotes the New International Revised Version. And I'm going to read it from the book, and here's the King James Version on the screen behind me. In a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize. You know that, don't you? So, run in a way that will get you the prize. Now, brethren, I think most of us know, how does the King James say this? Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receives the prize. That's in a normal race, where a bunch of runners all race and one comes out number one. He gets the number one prize. So run that you may obtain a prize. In the race we're called to, everyone who crosses the finish line wins. So even if you're the last one across the finish line, as long as you come on across the finish line, you win too. The problem this is really talking about is where you don't persevere to the end. Maybe you're just 10 yards away from the finish line, and you say, this is too hard. I can't keep huffing and puffing, and it's humiliating anyway. Everybody else is ahead of me. I'm just going to lay down right here. No. God is encouraging us. Endure to the end. Go ahead and finish. So run that you may obtain the prize. Keep winning. Keep running till you get across that finish line. I think that's encouraging because, brethren, there are a lot of things that will make us want to be lazy or just give up. And we are to warn those who are lazy. I'll give you a verse on that in the morning. If you won't go get a job and you're just being lazy and you're young and you should go get a job, I'm going to give you a verse where it tells the ministry and the brethren to warn one another lovingly. Don't be lazy. Go get a job. You need money to help where you're living. Even if you're living with your parents, help them out. Don't make them pay for you once you're an adult. And contribute to where you see God working. You're expected to give to God's work, wherever he's got it going. And it's faithful and not compromising on that work. All right, let's go to, there's verse 25. All right, we really covered that with the New International Revised Version. Next is Psalm 119. I know I'm going a little bit over 90 minutes. I said we were going to cut short, and then I decided to go further and ask for prayers, and remembered I wanted to give you these scriptures. I already had them lined up. Psalm 119, verse 10. In the New International, this is the NTL version. What would that be? The New Living Testament says, NLT, I may be saying that wrong, but whatever NLT stands for, that's the version that says it this way. I have tried hard to find you. Don't let me wander from your commands. This is David speaking to God. I've tried hard, God, to find you, which relates to my life when I was asking God, where is your true church? I spent 3 weeks begging God to show me where his church is. Don't let me wander from your commandments. If you have to spank me with love, and God's done that numerous times with me, brethren. Some of you've seen that happen to me. As I didn't pass the test on some things immediately. Later, after God finished shaking me around, where I said, okay, I'm getting it. I will straighten up my life and clean it up in these areas. We need to do that, brethren, all of us. And the New King James Version on Psalm 119:10 puts it this way, with my whole heart have I sought you. Like this version says, I've tried hard to find you. With my whole heart have I sought you, God. Oh, let me not wander from your commandments, which, brethren, we can so easily do. We can just be lazy and we will wander from God's commandments. We got to keep focus, keep those commandments in our minds, stay away from places where we would violate those commandments, and get enough rest, because when we're tired, surveys prove that's when one of the times when people sin the most is when they're tired and they lose their willpower. Know that of yourselves and stop and get enough sleep and rest. All right, well, 2 more verses, and then I'll close this out. 2 Timothy 4:7. In the NC version, NCV, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Well, that would be after one died or after Christ returned and looking back. Let's see how King James says it. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. If you see that in context, you'll get a little better feel for it. But we're, in essence, told we have to fight, and fight a good fight. This is not an easy walk down easy street. This is not, or luxury street or leisure street. This is like being in the military. We have an enemy, and we have to fight against that enemy. Sometimes that enemy is ourselves. It's fueled by the broadcast of the devil and evil. I've fought a good fight against all that. I've lifted the spiritual weights, and I'm gaining spiritual strength. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. One more verse I wanted to go through that should be encouraging to us, because if you know you got to fight a good fight and you say, I'm tired. Oh, yeah, but this is a fight. I got to get a little rest and back in the ring for round 2, round 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Ding, ding, Galatians 6, verse 9, in the New International Version. Mr. Armstrong used that version once in a while, although he would say, by and large, try to avoid these modern versions. We're going to come right back to King James in a second. NIV says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest, if we do not give up. And King James puts it this way, let's not weary, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall all reap if we faint not. Find ways to do good. Pray for Jacob. Pray for Dominic Mancini, Jacob Holst, like a holster without the ER, H-O-L-S-T, Jacob. Pray for those 2 men. Pray for the family of Elizabeth French. She lost her husband overnight. He was 38. No, she's 38. I think he was just a little older, 49. Abraham, by the way, just for some of you that say, oh, you got to be close to age when you marry. No, you don't. How old was Keturah when Abraham, over 100 years old, married her? She was able to have a whole flock of kids. So don't hurt brethren that where there's a situation where someone older and younger God has put them together and they've fallen in love. Abraham and Keturah, after Sarah died, were close to 100 years apart in age. How about those bananas, some of you wise crackers out there? Let us not be weary in well-doing, but Elizabeth lost her husband, Jonathan, and she's age 38 now. Her mother tells that freely. And has 5 minor children, all girls, 5 daughters. No father now, died overnight in his sleep. A man with a wonderful example, and I tell you, I've met Jonathan French, and it's my take on it that God considered him to have made it, and before anything that could happen to wash that out, God said, with whatever the condition and situation was, God said, I'm going to let him die because he's made it. He's got it made. And he's not hurting. He's not suffering. Now, the rest who are left behind, friends, family, yes, they are feeling the sting of death. So it's those of us that remain that need to comfort one another. Jonathan himself, he's got it made. I expect to see him in the first resurrection, and like Graham Davies, he wouldn't want you mourning terribly over him. As far as it goes with him, you should say, hey, our dad, my husband, my son, and my son-in-law, He's got it made in the shade. He's popping up when Christ comes back, ahead of those that might still be alive when Christ comes back. He comes up first. I believe with all my heart, soul, and mind and wit that Jonathan French is coming up in that first, that first resurrection. But comfort those who are missing the great love that Jonathan showed to many. So pray for his family, his wife, his kids especially, and then his mother-in-law, and even his grandmother-in-law. And he probably had a grandmother too. But pray for those who are hurting over that. And again, if you want to send a sympathy card, I gave you the address earlier. It's on the weekly bulletin page on Facebook, and you can you can find that page, weekly bulletin page. It comes up if you type facebook.com/prayer update. We couldn't get weekly bulletin as a code name after Facebook, but the name of the page is weekly bulletin. And if you put /prayer update, weekly bulletin page will pop up, and you can scroll down and find Elizabeth French's address if you'd like to show the kind of love where you go get a sympathy card, mail it to her, and just warm up her heart and the heart of her minor young children missing their dad. May I put this on the screen for just a moment, full screen? Whoops, I didn't mean to put that one. I meant to go back here, excuse me, and bring the Bible scripture on verse full screen, because I need to get our closing music up. Our media player crashed on us. It does that sometimes with certain videos if they're not edited down just exactly right. And that one we played tonight, it had that problem. But we're going to grab the closing music right here, the music for John Graham Davies' funeral, when the saints come marching in, that we'd like to close out with here on this program. So we'll pop back over there to that player screen. Thank you. And brethren, until the morning, hope you'll join us again in the morning for the Sabbath service on this, what day is it here? On the Hebrew calendar, God's sacred calendar, on the 17th day of the 8th month in the morning. It'll be the 23rd day of October. Services will begin at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time in the United States, and just figure your time out wherever you are from 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So let me wish you a good night's sleep, and until the morning for the Sabbath service, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath saying, Shabbat Shalom.